be grateful you live in America under the outdated, archaic, rusty, decrepit American electoral system and not in Europe, under the European systems. Kier Starmer has the Prime Minister of the UK has resigned. That makes, I think, in the last 10 years, six prime ministers. None of them have filled their term, their 4-year term. They fall like flies. Governments are crumbling all over Europe. And it's nothing new. It's normal in Europe for governments to just dissolve and collapse. Here in Germany, last year, the government collapsed. The Grand Coalition, or it's a three-way coalition, collapsed, and now the government of Friedrich Merz has been in power for, I guess, over a year. And I doubt, a lot of people have doubts that it will last its 4-year term. European governments collapse all the time, but American governments don't. Why is that? You know, since I've been in Europe, all the Europeans have complained about and disparaged and made fun of the American system, especially the electoral college, the presidential system. Of course, the states have a different system of voting. On the presidential, on the federal level, we have this electoral college, which is really complicated. And they say, yeah, you know, it's so outdated. It goes back to a time when there were no emails. You had to go by horseback from California to Washington to say how many votes there are in California, and it's stupid, and it's not real democracy, and also this two-party system. Why don't you have the popular vote like everyone else? Why can't you have more than two parties? That's not real democracy. Look at us. We have a real democracy. We vote. We have the popular vote, and we have. We have 5 different parties in one government. That's the way it should be. And then immediately their governments dissolve and collapse, and they scratch their heads and they say, I wonder why that keeps happening. There are 2 reasons why the American electoral system is better than the systems in Europe. First of all, it is stable. It is super, super stable. I will have my German friends here asking me, if there's a controversial president like Bush or Reagan or Trump, it's always the Republican presidents who get criticized a lot. And they'll ask me, Trump's in trouble again. How long do you think he will last? And I say, well, he's going to last 4 years. That's clear. It's a 4-year term. And then they say, no, what I mean is, do you think he'll stay president his whole term? And I say, yeah, that's how it works. You vote for him for 4 years. That's his term. He's president for term. And in Europe, they don't understand that because they have all kinds of ways for, elected officials to get out of their job, basically. They have, they can have a vote of no confidence where the parliament, says, I don't have trust in this leader anymore, and so he has to go. They can have, the coalition can fall apart. If you have a coalition system like in Germany where you have 2 or 3 different parties in one government, they immediately start to argue and fight, and then the coalition falls apart, and they have to have new elections. In the UK, it's basically a 2-party system, but you vote generally not for the person, not for the prime minister, but for the party, and the party was Labour Party that they voted for. So when Kier Starmer resigned, because everyone felt he should resign, I guess. They told him to resign, and so he did, I guess. If I were elected official, I think it would be my duty to keep on filling out the term. But anyway, so when he resigned, or he's going to resign, and there will be a new election, but it will be an internal election inside the party. And so the party will choose a new prime minister because the party is still in power. The party was voted in for 4 years. So they will choose a new prime minister without asking the people what they want at all. Okay, so that seems very strange to us as Americans, and but there are many, many ways the Europeans have of dissolving a a government, and a lot of it has to do with how they understand democracy. They see democracy as a system where you have to have a lot of different parties that represent various facets of the public, and all these parties should have a chance at governing. And so, as a result, in England it's different, but here in Germany and in places like Italy, they have coalitions where you vote, and it's like an a la carte menu. You say, well, I'll have a little of this and a little of that, and I'll have a little conservative, but I don't want to be too conservative, so I'll have this, I'll have the leftist here, and I know people here in Germany who vote like that. They think, well, I think that most people this year are going to vote for the Conservative Party. So, and I'm fine with that, but I don't want them to be too conservative. I want to have, like a hint of greenness. So I'm going to vote for the Greens in the hopes that the two main parties will be then the Conservatives and the Greens, and they will have a coalition, and that will be my ideal. It's like building a government out of Lego. That's how they imagine it, or putting together an a la carte menu or something. And of course, it never happens like that. It's just the two main parties. It's usually the Conservative Party and the Leftist Party. They have to have a coalition, and then so they coalesce. And there's the Conservatives and the Socialists, or leftist, left-leaning liberals, and they're completely opposed to each other in everything, but they have to form a government together. So they're constantly bickering, they're constantly fighting. If that were to happen in America, it would have to be a coalition between the Democrats and the Republicans. How was that going to work out? It's not. The parties in Germany are not as extreme as they don't hate each other quite as much as in America, but they hate each other, and it doesn't really. I mean, it's okay. Germany works, but it's not. It's not the ideal thing. And in America, we say clearly through the system that we have, we say we want one party to win, and we want the other party to be the opposition. So as a result, we have one guy, one president, and he is in office for 4 years, and you cannot take him out of office. You can kill him, he can resign, but even then, the vice president steps in. So it's never, we want to get these Republicans out of office. It doesn't happen like that. It's the 4-year term. And we do that so that we say, look, this guy has an idea. He wants a chance at it. He wants a shot. We're going to give him a shot. We're going to give him a solid 4 years to do the best he can. And then we're going to decide whether we still want to keep him or not. That's how we do it. And that is a very stable system. The other way the American system is different is that we always have a strong opposition. That's similar to England because it's a two-party system. We have more than two parties, by the way, in America. We, on each ballot, there's 6 or 7 parties. And when we go through the popular vote, no party gets the absolute majority, 51% of the votes. And in the Constitution, it says you need 51% of the votes to have an absolute majority to be president. And so that's why we do the electoral system. That's why we run it through a second stage. We decide in the states. Each state decides who they want to vote for. Texas votes for the Republicans. Okay, so they do that on a state level. The popular vote decides which candidate they want. And then on the state level, they vote for the candidates. And then the candidates have 51% or the majority. But it's rare for one party to have more than like 51%, 55, maybe 60%. That's a lot of the votes. What happens is that they get only a little bit higher than the majority, and then the opposition, in this case the Democrats, have almost as much. So the Democrats now have, I don't know how many people they have in the House of Representatives and Senate, but it's like 45%. So it's a strong opposition. They're united. It's one party. They're willing to fight tooth and nail against the evil Republicans, their enemies. And when the Republicans are in the opposition, they're willing to fight tooth and nail. And so we have this checks and balances system where no party has too much power because there is always an opposition fighting. In Europe, in England, it's like that. But in Europe, most European countries, and in Germany, it's the opposite. You have, in Germany right now, there are 6 parties in parliament. 2 of them are in a coalition, so they're opposite parties, actually, but they're in one coalition. And the opposition is divided up between 4 different parties, and all of whom hate each other. So they bicker with each other all the time. They can't do anything united. There is no united front against the government, and there is no real opposition against the government because it's divided into these fragmented parties. So checks and balances. I mean, again, it works, right? Germany, Europe, even though they continually collapse, they still have a good functioning democracy. It works, but that's not the way I think of as a democracy. I want those checks and balances. I want that strong opposition. So when you hear people complaining about the U.S. electoral system, how it's outdated and archaic and it's not a real democracy because, we can't combine a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and the popular vote ends at the state level, doesn't get to the federal level because we're not a nation state. We're a federation of semi-sovereign states. And all those complaints, I guess they make sense in some way, and they're all fine. But what we get from it is this extreme, very tough, very robust, very healthy opposition in terms of checks and balances, and a stable system where every 4 years we have a new president, or we don't have a president for those 4 years. We don't have a new president for those 4 years. It's a system every 4 years happen. The first election we had, I think, was in 1788. 1788, I think. And since then, it's been every 4 years we've had another president. That doesn't come anywhere near here in Europe. Last year, about a year ago, we had a different. The last government in Europe only lasted 3 years. This government, I don't know how long it'll last. Before Meloni came into power in Italy, the average of a political party in Italy was like 1 year or even less or something. It was ridiculous, and it's because of these fragmentation of the parties and the need for a coalition, which always breaks up and always collapses. Not always, but often. It's a serious danger. And so we've traded in that for stability, for a strong stability that is unlike anywhere else. Be grateful that you live in the system you live in. You may not understand it because no one takes the time to figure out what the electoral system is. And you may be easily persuaded by people who say, that's not democracy, that's archaic, that's outdated. But look at how it works. It works. Be grateful for that.